G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today, we are talking with lead singer of Sweetwater, Nancy Nevins. Sweetwater was formed in LA, California, and released their first album in 1968. On Friday, the 15th of August 1969, Sweetwater were the first band to play the famous Woodstock Festival. Not long after the Woodstock performance, in December 1969, Nancy was involved in a near-fatal car accident, which made her unable to perform with the band. She recovered from the car accident and released her 1975 self-titled solo album. In the present day, Nancy is now an English teacher and made the time to be on Vinyl Vibes today to share with us her time in music. Let's start at the beginning. What was your first musical, memory?
Well, I don't know what my first memory was, to tell you the truth, but I do remember the first time I sang, and I got this feeling of wanting to be a performer. I was 5 years old, and I was walking along the beach with my mom. I was holding her hand, and I was holding my aunt's hand, and they were talking over my head. I don't know what they were talking about. I didn't care. And all of a sudden, I burst into song. I started singing a song that was popular on the radio by Pat Boone, who was an old timer. And it was a love song. And I started singing it. Now, God always gave me a really good voice. And as a child, I had a big voice. And so they stopped talking. They stopped talking, Jack, and they listened to me. And that was my aha moment. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to cheer people up, especially my mom. And they would stop worrying and talking and just listen to me.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic story, Nancy. And I mean, you mentioned Pat Boone there. I mean, what are some of the other people, growing up, that you were kind of listening to?
Pat Boone, Aretha Franklin. I thought I discovered her. I mean, I thought I was the only one. I listened to Tennessee Ernie Ford, Pat Boone, Aretha Franklin, and I would listen. You know how we have earbuds now, and you're wearing headphones, but we used to have kind of similar earbuds, transistor radios, and you could tuck it under your pillow at night and put in a little earpiece and be crooned to sleep, and no one would know. Leslie Gore, those are all old timers. And early Ray Charles, really early, because it was a long time ago. It was the late 50s, early 60s, and I also did a lot of church music because I just liked it. If it was music, I just liked it. The only thing I didn't care for were polkas. And I mean, I took music until I was 14. I started at 7. And so I took it for 7 years, every week. And then things were getting very complicated on the keyboards. And I switched to folk music, because I could do it easily. So, and I started writing music when I was very young. I started writing love songs. And it's funny, a little girl writing love songs, and it's church music, really, in terms of structure. But it was good enough to get me a scholarship to Cal Arts. Now, at the time that Cal Arts was just happening, have you ever heard of Cal Arts?
Yeah.
It's a pretty big place now, but they first got together. Disney brought them together. Walt Disney brought them together, the Los Angeles Conservatory of Music and the Chouinard Art School. He put them together. And that was the semester. I got a partial scholarship to Conservatory of Music. I had to study classical guitar, and I got it in composition because of a song I wrote that Sweetwater later recorded called Here We Go Again. And, this was like a big deal, but I hated college. It was like college or Sweetwater, college or go on the road with Sweetwater. Guess what? I just go on the road with Sweetwater.
Yep.
And I walked out of college, walked clean out. I just got bumped out of Glendale High School, and I didn't want to go to school anymore. And I went on the road with Sweetwater.
I'm thinking we're talking, you mentioned the late 50s, probably early 60s. I mean, did the Beatles ever impact you at all, or were they too late for you to, did they come a bit later for you?
The Beatles were a little bit later for me, but they were still remarkable, amazing. No one writes better than the Beatles as a group. They were really, really outstanding writers. Paul still is. McCartney still is. But at the time, it was so breathtakingly fresh. No one had seen anything like that.
Did you ever, start writing your own songs early on? Or, tell me about that. Tell me about that journey.
Well, it just came out of me. My dad was a newspaper writer, and I came from a background of lots of talk, lots of language, lots of music. We all had music lessons. I was the only one that I just loved it. And I watched my older sister heal herself through music. And I found that the healing properties of I don't know if it's the tones or what it is. There's something about music that can transport you, heal the things that don't work. And my oldest sister had typical teenage problems of a 15-year-old, and she'd have these hunched up shoulders. And I would sit across the room in the little living room, and I'd watch her back as she played the piano and sang Summertime from Porgy and Bess. And her shoulders dropped, and her big voice filled the room. And I watched it healing. I watched her heal. I don't know. She stopped that, but I picked up on it. That's the main thing. I picked up on it, and I started to heal myself because I, too, had teenage angst and teenage wanderlust. I headed out. I thought Hollywood was a great cure for Glendale. So I palled up with a turtleneck. We wore these orange turtleneck sweaters when we performed. I had a pal. Her name was Diane. She played guitar like Bonnie Raitt. She was so good. We did our first show in the 8th grade at Woodrow Wilson Junior High. We sat on stools, and she played, and I sang House of the Rising Sun. And we got a standing ovation. No one had seen such a thing before. No one anywhere did things like that. So by the time I met Sweetwater, I was ready for them, and they were ready for me.
You mentioned Sweetwater there, and I love the story about how you discovered Sweetwater. You were walking along, and I think it was they were playing in a coffee shop window, and you started singing Motherless Child. I mean, yeah, like take me through that.
Well, I was high, okay? And I was driving my car. I was talking to my car, and I said, we got to come down to the car. And we parked, me in the car, a little Buick. And I parked across the street, and I looked at them, and they were jamming in the window. Now, jamming meant only that in the 60s. You could play, everybody could be in a different key. Who cared? Just like, and they were jamming in the window, and I said, So I went in there. And it was a real deep room. It was a place called the Scarab. And it was a deep room. And there were some random Indian rugs scattered around. And they were kind of set up in the window and set up by the wall. And I just stood there and drank a coffee, I guess, and ate something. And I listened to what they were doing. They were playing with 2 chords, G and C, G and C, G and C, G and C. They were just playing with them. Mm-hmm. They had congas and bongos. They had the flute. They had the cello player. I don't think they had no, I said cello. I don't think he was there. Electric piano is what they had. And I just stood up. I just heard this song, this Motherless Child, in that riff. And it worked right on top of it. Still does. And I started singing it. And Albert, who was the flute player, he's been dead since 94. But he beckoned me up till they had a microphone. And I just sang, and I kept singing it and singing it. Now I was singing it because it was an old cotton pickers song from the Deep South. No one knows who wrote that song. It's a very ancient song. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like nobody's there. And I picked it up, and I would sing it with Diane, who played the Bonnie Raitt thing in all these coffee houses. So it was in my head. So I heard it over their riff because it was in my head anyway, and because I really felt it at the time. Albert beckoned me up, and we did that for a long time. Then I just left. Oh, well, I'm done. I'm leaving. Bye. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who they were. And I just wandered off. Do you know how I hooked up with them? Alex, the keyboard player, guy playing the keyboards, he found me. Now, I don't know how he did it. He says he went to a head shop who knew me. And I don't remember that, but that's what he says. And I think they showed it like that in the VH1 movie. I'm not sure. He went to a head shop and got my phone number. He started calling me. What's this guy want? And what he wanted was, he wanted me to join their band. Ooh, really? Not into that, man. Okay. So he kept calling. They had a gig at a place called the Hullabaloo. And they were called Jay Walker and the Pedestrians. And there were 26 of them. And I promise you, Jack, they did not play in the same key. I promise you. Everybody had a different key. They were like jamming. It was the guys who developed this whole thing. His name is Bob Barboza. He's the one who had the whole idea of what's now known as world music. But at the time, and fusion, at the time, there were no categories like that. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. I mean, we were so used to 4 guys playing rock and roll, Louie, whatever. And then all of a sudden, this guy with this vision Barboza had, he went off to Vietnam, and so he lost a hold of us. But anyway, I played along with it. I kind of went along with it. I went just to kind of please Alex. I guess having a guy call is not so bad. Anyway, he was calling, and so we performed. I don't know what key I was singing in. I don't know who I was singing with, but there were 26 of us on the stage. I remember playing Patty Cake with him. We played it together, and that was part of the break. There was a little break in our song. So after that, I got another call from Alex. He said, "Hey," he said, "8 of us really want to be serious about this thing, and we really want to get together." And so I met with 8 of them from this 26, and they weren't all good, but they were serious, and they meant it. And now rock and roll was just coming of age. The Beatles had just been out about a year or two. The Stones were out. It was all kind of new. There was no model to follow. And there were rock rooms like the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West. We don't have them anymore. We have concerts now, and big tickets and outdoor things like Coachella, which costs a lot of money. Before, I've got posters on my wall for $4 for a weekend. Can you imagine that? But everything was new then, because nobody knew what was really going on. All we knew is we had this thing in us, this music in us, and we had to say something. And we thought the war was wrong, dead wrong. We didn't know enough. I didn't know enough politics to know why. I just thought war was wrong. I still do. Now I'm learning more. I know more about talking and all that kind of thing, and diplomacy. But then I didn't really care. I just knew that war was wrong. And we did not protest like I wish we had, but we didn't. We stayed away from it. We were people pleasing a little bit, but I don't think we even knew that term. That term hadn't even evolved yet. But we were young kids. And we were trying to please our parents and please ourselves and please our friends and all of our fans. So there was a lot going on that there was no recipe. There was no model. Nobody had gone before us. Nobody did what we did. There were 3 guitars in most bands. We didn't even have 1 guitar sometimes. We performed without a guitar sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was rock and roll. Here's this woman singing lead. Are you kidding me? A woman? And I'd be up front, and God gave me this great voice. And, I'm using my voice differently today, but at the time, that was what I did.
You mentioned also too, a bit earlier, the festival tickets, and which brings me on over to the Monterey International Pop Festival, which I know you guys went to. Like, do you remember much about that festival?
Not at all. I remember is that we couldn't get in. Somebody said, well, there's a pop festival. We said, well, what's a pop festival? No one knew that word. And then we heard what it was. So we jumped in the cars, we drove up there, and we stood at the chain link fence and pressed our noses to the chain link fence to see. And you couldn't see shit. Just see the back of people, And I remember spending the night. They treated me like a princess, and I slept by myself in Alex's panel truck. Now, they don't remember it this way, but I remember this. I was by myself. And then in the morning, Albert, the flute player, and I went down to freshen up. There was a creek running by the place where were sleeping in the cars. They all slept in the other car. And I got the car all to myself. So in the morning, we went to freshen up at this creek, which was running by the roadside, Albert and I. And Albert started splashing this water on his face. And I said, don't do that, man. That's like dirty water. And he looked at me and he said, oh, chicken. He used to call me chicken. He said, this is Sweetwater. And we had this light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Oh, Sweetwater. We just, oh my God. Let me tell you what had been going on before that Sweetwater. Oh, chicken, this is Sweetwater. He said, as he splashed his face. Didn't listen to me. We ran up to the cars and we told everybody we got a name. It's Sweetwater. I said, Sweetwater? Yeah, Sweetwater. So they all went for it. Here's why. We had been standing around in the kitchen at Alex's parents' house where we rehearsed. And it was they were immigrants from Italy, and they had this old-fashioned TV repair store connected to the kitchen, which was a small California cottage house, small kitchen, small living room. I even stood out in the kitchen singing while they were set up in the living room because there was no room for me in the living room. So I stood in the kitchen and I sang. But anyway, we had been standing around in the kitchen reading dictionaries, looking for names of our group. So this was a big moment by the riverside at Monterey Pop where Albert said, oh, chicken, This is Sweetwater.
So you've got the name now, and so how did you guys kind of come to get signed by the record company then? Like how did that all come to be?
We had a crazy manager. He's still alive. His name is Bruce Glatton. At the time, he had a company called Shady Management. And it didn't bother us. We thought, oh, well, he was a real go-getter. He was a guy who really, really chased after people. He was big on relationships. Now, this is something that we see now. They tell you, oh, you got to go kiss ass with this person. But anyway, he just naturally liked and knew everybody. He was a real go-getter at the time, and he started booking us around. Now, this was happening to a lot of people at the same time, and we didn't know that. We thought it was just happening to us. But we were so good that we kept getting asked back. We'd be asked back, and he would keep track of all this. It was our manager who got us to Woodstock. We were on tour back east, and he's the one. He said, I got one more for you. He said, yeah, take you to Woodstock. We went to Woodstock. Was terrible, Jack.
I've heard.
It was terrible. Yeah. I mean, everything about it was just sucked really bad. I mean, the sound was bad. The stage was wobbly. The people were crazy. Everybody was crazy there. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So you asked me, how did we come to be? Well, we had a great manager. He was great. And everybody liked him, and he knew everybody. And he just made phone calls. And of course, because of his relationship with Bill Graham, we played the Fillmores a lot. Fillmore West and Fillmore East a lot. So we played, and we also shared the bill with other bands that were big at the time. Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Janis, all these people. We played with them all the time. Airplane, we played with them all the time. We shared the bill all the time. Cream, Eric Clapton, everybody, all the time. Van Morrison, everybody. Oh, we shared these bills because these acts were popping up all over the country. And like I say, it's like $4 to get in, $7, $6. This manager, Bruce, booked us at the Whiskey a lot because he was real close with Elmer Valentine, who's a dead guy now, who started the Whiskey, and his brother. And they were close. Anyway, one night, 11 record companies, 11, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay, came to bid on us. We opened for Janis, and we opened for the Doors. I can't remember who we were opening for. And 11 companies showed up to bid. You know who really was crazy about us? Mo Austin of Warner Brothers. He just adored Sweetwater. And I think Bruce kissed up to him too a lot. He gave us a big, fat deal. But he assigned us our first record producer who looked at us and had no idea what to do with us because there was no guitar.
Yeah.
And there was me, and everyone else didn't sing very good. So this guy kind of looked at us and he thought, what am I going to do with these people? So our first producer, Dave Hassinger, I do remember this. He had a lot of trouble trying to visualize us on record. At the time, they had studios with tracks, and they would put everything on a different track. So they would, if you wanted to pull something down or push it up. So he had no idea what to do with us. He had no idea what to do with the drummers, the conga, bongos. Oh my God. And this singer and all these other singers that aren't very good. So Hassinger did the best. He had produced a group that's been gone for years, decades, called the Electric Prunes. And they had a big hit. And he was writing it. So he was a big deal at Warner Brothers. That's why Warner Brothers gave him to us. We didn't think we had a choice. So we tried to work. So our first album just really doesn't sound like we sounded live. It's a good album. It's fine. But it's not really as exciting as we were. The excitement's all mixed out of it because Hassinger didn't know what to do with us.
And I'm interested to know, like, when you kind of first found out you guys are going to play this thing called Woodstock, was it seen as a big thing at the time or important thing, or was it just, hey, whatever?
It was so bummer. And they were having a lot of problems we didn't know about, but you could feel the tension. And we learned Andy Zachs is the guy that produced the 50th anniversary Woodstock package. He's a funny character. We learned a lot about Woodstock from this guy. He had a job. He had a little desk at Warner Brothers, and he kept walking by this open door, and there were these boxes with big tapes in them. And he said to somebody, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's just Woodstock. That's the real thing." Now, This, of course, piqued his interest. It's the real thing? What do you mean? So it turns out I learned from Andy Zachs that every single act that we played at Woodstock re-recorded before they put them out. There is no such thing as a live album. I don't know if you knew that. Maybe you didn't. But live album, no one would buy. What happens with a live album is they crank up, they put in the audience, and they re-record the parts they want you to listen, notice, make it sound live. But because if you've ever, hey, here's a true test. If you have ever tried to record a party, everybody's drunk and you think, oh, it's a great thing. Oh, somebody's so wonderful. And we record it. And then the next day you listen to it, it sounds like, oh my God, you can't believe it's the same thing. Like, oh my God, we were there? How terrible. That's what happens when you try to record a live performance. There's no such thing. They take all that music and they redo it. They make it better. They make it make sense. So you can listen to it. At least in the old days, that was like that. I don't know what they're doing now. Andy Zachs found out that the only group that had not re-recorded was yours truly, because they figured that we were gone. I was dead. They were gone. So we weren't invited to re-record, and we were cut out of the movie because we were probably dead, and et cetera, et cetera. That was why. But there was a soundtrack by the stage. Now, the guys are really high in the soundtrack, and they're holding jacks up. What's this? What's this? Wonder what this is. Wonder what this is. And we're on stage going crazy. There were no monitors. And that big field of people.
Yeah.
And in stage was 30 feet of journalists. This was different. This had never happened before. All the journalists from all around the world were there. 30 feet of them. And it was in August in New York. So it was sweaty. I'll never forget the sight of them sitting on each other's shiny, sweaty shoulders. Big camera lenses like a snake, you know? And it was the first time ever. I was always used to people grooving in front of me and playing with the people. Now there were cameras in front of me. I was very awkward, Jack. It was crazy. To have to sing romantically to a camera lens is terrible. It's terrible. Now you have to know how to do that because that's the way it is. But back then it was like, what? And these people were filming everything.
Yeah. And you know, from hearing all that, it's interesting, you know, that Woodstock has gone down to as the iconic thing that it has, given that it probably, for the audience and for the people playing, it wasn't as groovy as what it is made out to be, you know?
Well, it wasn't groovy at all for the performer, but for the people. I think the people really made Woodstock. The ones that broke down the fences and came in there and stretched out. That's not going to happen today. There's going to be fights and bloody noses and all this stuff. But there was none of that then. There was so much peace and love. And it was all over that field. It had nothing to do with the music, nothing to do with the performers. There were bands that weren't going to go on until they got paid. Not our band. But I did find that out from Andy Zachs. There were no bathrooms. It was terrible.
Do you remember much about them? Because I know that Woodstock began at I think it was 5:06, August 15th, 1969. Woodstock began. Do you guys do you remember much about the morning leading up to that? Because I know you guys had to get helicoptered in to Woodstock. Do you remember much about leading up to the performance?
Oh, do I? I remember that the hotel didn't even know who we were. So we went up to the desk and we said, well, we're Sweetwater. There was 10 of us, I think, with the roadies. So that's a lot of rooms. You know what? They only have 2 rooms for us. And guess who got a room? That meant everybody else was in this one other room. Everybody. And the managers and the roadie just stayed away. They just stayed at the kids. So anyway, I even had a hippie sleeping in my bathtub. I had to get him out of there. He said, here you go, man. No, get out of here. So the reason we played first, Woodstock was supposed to start at noon. And we thought, okay, we're going to be back east anyway. And we were back east somewhere. We thought, okay, if we go on at noon, we can get Alex back to California, Riverside, California, because he was in the Air Force Reserve. And that weekend in August, that very weekend, the Air Force Reserve had a training camp where they expected everybody to show up, and they renewed their whatever's. They had to be there for the weekend. So we said, okay, we did the math. We did the airplane scheduling and all that. that if we play for an hour and then we drive him to the airport, we're all going to he'll get back in time. He'll get back by 6 a.m. Saturday morning and drive to Riverside and show up. Da-da-da-da-da. And but what they say about plans. So we get to this holiday and they don't even know who we are. And we finally get on stage and we perform. And but he can still make it. He'll be okay. We're still gonna do it.
Yeah.
So we were the first band to fly in there on helicopters. Do you know why? Because we got into a traffic jam. Alex he made up the story that the police stopped us. They did. What happened was this traffic jam. We were really restless around the Holiday Inn going, we got to get to the gig. So we finally said, let's just jump in the cars and drive there. Now our equipment was already there and the roadie was there. So all we had to do was get the bodies there, get the artists there. So we're driving down this 1-lane country road, bump, 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 not paved. And there's cars coming the other way. There's 1 lane, bump, 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 so jam. So we jumped out, we all stood around and wondered what to do. And somebody had this great idea about going into a farmhouse and calling for helicopters. So that guy went and knocked on the door of this farmhouse. Farmer let him in and he called for helicopters. So we went up in the helicopter. We were the first band to go up in helicopters. Now behind the stage at Woodstock, they had a natural helipad. It was natural. It was made for it. So I remember as we flew in, Alex said to the pilot, hey man, Alex was a keyboard player. He said to the pilot, hey man, what are all those crops? And the pilot laughed and said, those aren't crops, dude. Those are people. People? That was the first time I was worried.
Yeah.
All those crops were people. So then we sat down and we went on stage and on stage was kind of comforting because I did recognize the drums and the amps and everything. And I recognized how it should have been, but the monitors weren't working. Remember the guys in the truck with the jacks wondering what was going on? And the stage went like this. It was plywood and they had just put it up and it was going back and forth and back and forth. And have you ever sung at a party, Jack?
Many times.
Voice just goes away. You can't hear yourself.
Yeah.
That's what happened to us. Our voices just went away. We couldn't hear what we really sounded like. Just gone. But we were pros and we went through it all. We did our 45-minute set and then we're looking at oh my God, we got to get Alex back. Remember the Air Force Reserve?
Yep,
we got to get it back. We got to get back. So we started running up this hill to try and catch a helicopter. We finally caught the very last helicopter at Woodstock Friday night. Guy took off just as the sun was falling. We got that one. Why were we having so much? I don't know why. We're trying to run up this hill and get past all these old people and everybody getting off the helicopter and catch the helicopter before it took off. So finally we got one. It was me, Alex, and the leader, Fred, and the roadie, Brian. So we got on there and we go up in the air and I'm watching the nightfall. As I look out the helicopter, I see nightfall. And the last thing I saw were the tops of the evergreen trees of New York, upstate New York. And the helicopter's going along. Flip, 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 flip. All of a sudden, the rotor blades slowed down and everybody leaned forward and stared at the dashboard like we knew what we were looking at. It was just like it was so comic. I can't even tell the story. But all of a sudden, the first thing that pilot said, he was a thin-lipped, short-haired, short-sleeved guy. He was so straight, and he'd had a day full of hippies, stinky old hippies. And the first thing he said was out of gas. Guy had no social skills. Out of gas. And all of a sudden what went through my head was Buddy Holly and all these people who died in air crashes.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, we're gonna die. And I remember those tall trees. And I thought, oh my God, all of a sudden he puts the chopper down. He knew about a little tiny airport, one hangar, one runway. He knew about it, but he didn't tell us. Put it down. And he said, we'll get gas here. So we thought, oh, good. Okay. So we all hustled out of there. We hustled into this hangar, which was lit like Christmas. God, it was such a good feeling. Safety at last. So I said, I'm going into the restroom. So I went to the ladies' room and I put splash water on my face. And I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh my God, we can still get him there. So we could still get Alex back to the other coast so that he could get to Riverside. He might be a little bit late, but he'll get there. So it's nighttime, Jack. And I come out of this restroom and I said to somebody, did you get the key? meaning the key to the gas. And you know what the guy said? It was our pilot. He said, no, the guy with the key went home. He won't be back till morning. And then they shoot us out of there.
Yeah, right.
They didn't want in there. The only other person in there was a guy that looked just like our pilot, really short hair, short sleeve shirt, button up, and sick of everybody who's like a hippie. So they shoot us out of this. So you know what? We spent the night in the helicopter, Alex and I. And Fred went around the corner of the building. He said, give me all your change. What they had at the time was a thing called a payphone. They didn't have cell phones or computers. They had a payphone. And he put your dimes in there and you could make calls. So Fred gathered all our change. He had a quarter, dimes, and nickels. And he went around the corner of the building where there was a payphone. He started calling, help. And the roadie had an atlas, and he went around the other corner with a flashlight and an atlas to figure out where we were. Alex and I just fell asleep or tried to sleep in the helicopter. You know what we heard, though? We heard all the happy people trudging through the woods on their way to Woodstock. Oh, we're going to have a great time. But the story gets even worse. Finally, in the morning, the rain had started. But in the morning, like a big car with big wings in the back, like a chariot, showed up. And the guy was driving it, and he said, get in. I'll take you back. They were going to take us to the Holiday Inn. And we got there, and we were persona non grata. The inn hated us. Because why? Remember the flute player, Albert? Well, he had driven the equipment in the U-Haul back to the Holiday Inn through cow pastures and everything. And he had run into the front overhang of the Holiday Inn. So they hated us. Our bags were packed, and they wanted us out. And I knew that Alex was going to go to Vietnam. He knew it too, because of this terrible. There was no way to get him back. It was now. We were back east, and it was Saturday. There's no way we're going to get him back now. It was the quietest trip home ever. Nobody knew what to think. And then we get home, and poor Alex, he turned himself into the Air Force. And they didn't do much, but put him on KP duty all weekend. So he was in the kitchen peeling potatoes all weekend. And then Fred and I went to our parents' house to take showers and eat dinner and all that, and watched the 11 a.m. news. You know what they were saying on the news? Woodstock is the greatest thing that's ever happened in rock and roll. And we're sitting there going, it is? We were there.
Yeah.
The hype had already started.
Yeah.
But we will always be the first band that played.
Always and forever. And, that's amazing stories there, right there, Nancy. And, I mean, and then of course, moving a few months after Woodstock, you had the almost fatal car accident. I mean, how did that impact you on your musical journey? Because it had a pretty big impact on you.
Actually, I was in a deep state of denial. My voice was gone, but I didn't care, because I had the music in me. So it was 4 months after Woodstock, and we had just taped the Red Skelton show. And I was on my way to see a Steve Allen show that we had taped that was airing that night, December 8th, 1969. And I had my girlfriend with me, the Bonnie Raitt Pickard. And she was in the car with me, and nothing happened to her. And I got on this freeway at the end of the day, and I was driving to Alex's parents' house. They lived in Silver Lake. So I was driving from my mom's house in Glendale to Silver Lake in Los Angeles. I got on the freeway, and I said to my friend, phew, we made it. And right after I said that, bang, I got hit by that drunk driver. He made an accordion out of my car and went spinning across the freeway. And nothing happened to my friend. But what happened to me was I pushed that Buick Steel up with my head, and I was taken to Glendale Memorial Hospital on the one night of the month when all the best head doctors in the world have their meeting. They were all there, and they all worked on me. And they said, this girl will not live. They said, no one can survive a blow like that. What happened to me was in the motor center of my brain. When I came out of the coma, I was so rock and roll. My first question wasn't, where's mom, or thank God, or, you know what I said first? Do the papers know? Because I was rocking. I was still at Woodstock. I had no idea what had happened to me. But what did happen to me was I received the last rites. And the Catholics will know this. The last rites are one of the sacraments. So I've had all the sacraments now, except marriage. I've had extreme unction. which means I'm good to go. If it's all true, I'm good.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came out of this coma. I had brain damage for about 12 years. I have what's called petit mal seizures. Petit mal seizures were episodes. What happens when you have a head injury, and this happens to anybody with a head injury, you can space out and nobody knows it. You're not there at all and no one knows. What happened to me was I had a lot of problems with words when I would speak. For example, you and I are talking and I want to say something and I can see what I want to say. I know what the word looks like. It's in my head, but I can't say it. Or the opposite. I would say a word and it wouldn't even be here. It's sort of like a blackout, but you're not drinking and you're not high. Kind of what happened to me. And I saw the neurologist every 3 months. I was supposed to go for the rest of my life, but I haven't had a seizure in over 30 years. What happened is I had surgery. I had 6 surgeries on my throat. They were whittling away polyps, a thing called polyps. The vocal cord is a strip of skin. Everybody has 2 of them. They lay open. You have this, I have it, everybody has this. When you make any noise, they shut and they vibrate. It's called vibrating. But it's just they're shutting and opening and shutting. Any noise. What happens to somebody like me is I had polyps that were a result of the breathing machine they had me on for too long. This is a breathing machine I was supposed to go on for 24 hours. I was on it for 5 days. What it did was it caused the polyps to grow around one of my cords. Any sound that you make, anything, it's the cords moving. So my right cord can't move. It was frozen with this scar tissue. So what they did when they operated was they went in and whittled at the scar tissue. They had to stop eventually because it's just skin. When they stopped, that was it. So my cord will move. I taught it to move so I could sing. That's how I sound now. Those are scar tissue over the cord, like my fingers. So when my right cord goes to move, it's a scar tissue. So that's why I have a different sound today. I don't have this. I can't sing this clear notes anymore.
Yeah, look, and in saying all that happened with that accident into your voice, I mean, it really, I think, and it really is a true testament to it's a great achievement that you were able to still do your 1975 album, I think, which has some really good songs in it. I mean, was that a pretty good moment for you, having gone through all that and still being able to get your voice back?
I did get it. I got something back, and it was a different period. Sweetwater fell apart. They could not manage without a good front, and they didn't have a good front because I was gone, and they didn't have it. So the band kind of fell apart, and everybody went different ways. 2 of them, interestingly, the 2 that are still alive went off and played music with other people. One went to Johnny Tillotson, the other one went to Yanni, and they played for years and years and years with these other people. And very good songwriter, the keyboard player, Alex, very good songwriter. He always has been. I had to go through a lot of therapy, didn't take. What I did was I turned to drugs and alcohol too much because I had lost so much and I was trying to compensate. I was trying to keep this dream in my head, I think, going. I don't know what I was doing. But, I never really took an honest look at myself. And then in 1976, I stopped drinking and I stopped drugging. And I got married for a little while. I got unmarried. Then I went to school. Remember I told you about that scholarship I walked away from?
Yeah.
And I've become a teacher. Now I've been a teacher for 34 years. I teach college English, writing and literature, mostly writing. And the computers come along and it's all of that's happened. And now we're back. What a long, strange trip it's been.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Nancy, for today. I think we've spoken about some really groovy things, so thank you.
I hope so.
That was lead singer of Sweetwater, Nancy Nevins. If you'd like to check out more of Sweetwater's work, you can head to the band's website at sweetwaterband.com. Remember to share this episode with other music fans, and if you really enjoyed this edition, we'd love it if you'd leave a review. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes, and to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.